Hello, my name's Roisin, and the play's the thing. Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. So, let's talk Shakespeare. We're pretty much all aware that Shakespeare wrote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." You may also be aware that he used a convention popular within Elizabethan drama called the play within a play, wherein characters within a play perform a play of their own as part of the action. And it tends to go beyond the mere donning of disguises and costumes, which Shakespeare also loved to put in his plays. He used this convention explicitly in 7 of his plays: The Taming of the Shrew, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Love's Labour's Lost, The Merry Wives of Windsor, As You Like It, The Tempest, and Hamlet. So that is 6 comedies, but only 1 tragedy, and we'll get back to that later. Though if anyone thinks The Tempest is actually funny, I wouldn't trust them to tell me a joke, but since everyone ends up married at the end instead of dead, then it counts as a comedy. So why the popularity of this convention for both Shakespeare and his contemporaries? To understand that, we need just a little context on the history of Renaissance theatre. I promise I won't go on too long here. Shakespeare was writing from roughly 1585 to 1613, so late Elizabethan and early Jacobean period in England, though his work is influenced by work going on in Italy at the time, as well as his English contemporaries. England was well known throughout Europe at the time for the strength of its professional theatre, and theatre companies toured the country. But professional theatre was still relatively new and a very exciting event. Think of the entrance of the players in Hamlet. Because of the newness of the profession, Renaissance players were often very self-conscious of their own theatricality, and questions of the morality of theatre, the impact of it, and what truth can come from drama were hot topics of the day. Anti-theatricalists insisted that players were immoral for encouraging vice by staging bad behaviour. As a new form, the same devices are used over and over. Stock characters, the continental or Mediterranean setting, clownage and dumb shows, wordplay, mercantile life, love between people of high rank, and because these tropes are so ubiquitous, they are ripe for subversion. Think of love triangles in modern fantasy novels, or the fake dating trope in a romance novel. Because we know, or think we know, how these go, they are great places to innovate. Dramatists slipped tragedies into comedies, comedies into tragedies. They had everything ranging from dumb shows to full productions, and sometimes even framed a play within the setting of another play, such as Shakespeare does with The Taming of the Shrew. For Shakespeare, his audience knew a play within a play as well as we know the trope of enemies to lovers. Now that we know Elizabethan playwrights were as obsessed with the structures of theatricality as modern movie bros like Christopher Nolan are obsessed with the limits of filmmaking, we can focus on the play within a play and what purpose it can serve for the writer and for the audience. Aside from being good practice to have one play on stage that's worse than the one you're actually presenting. As I see it, we have 3 main functions for the play within the play. First and most simple is the part that it plays in the plot. If these plays within a play had no point in the drama, then they wouldn't work at all. Though some of these functions are so tenuous, it's hard to say that they actually do work. The second is to comment on the play in which it is situated. If we see a play performed for the characters within a play, we are naturally going to draw comparisons and contrasts with the play within which it is situated. I feel like I'm describing the plot of Inception. And so can be used to draw out themes and ideas, to highlight absurdities in comedy and to make us laugh, or to show us where our focus should be throughout the rest of the play or in what we have just watched. The final, and to my mind most interesting use of the play within a play, is to comment on the idea of drama and the narrative form. Presenting us with a play within a play reminds us that what we are watching is artificial. It subtly breaks down the fourth wall and shatters the illusion that the playwright is at the same time working so hard to create, causing us to think about that illusion and the mechanics of theatre. It also turns the players we've been watching on stage into an audience, and so holds up a mirror to ourselves, causing us to consider our role within the performance. It lets us in behind the scenes. It's a wink and a nod, like when a character in a film says, "This ain't a movie, kid." A meta-narrative wink to the audience gets us on side, and invites us to compare this work with cruder versions of the same thing that we've seen before. If this were played upon the stage now, I could condemn it as impossible fiction. Shakespeare was doing it long before shows like Community, and the Elizabethans had to rely far more on the power of the words alone, without the advantage of effects that we have now. Shakespeare himself was so enamoured with this metaphor, the idea of a play as a reflection of life. It appears multiple times throughout his work, and not just in those where the play within a play features. He uses words like argument, prologue, player, act, audience throughout his works, in both literal and figurative senses. Even the name of his theatre, the Globe, reinforces this theatre real-world connection. It makes sense that the theatre was a preoccupation of his work. He was an actor, a playwright, and part owner of the Globe. It was part and parcel of his daily life, and as a metaphor, it was actually really common throughout Renaissance Europe. So, now you've got some of the theory, let's put that into action in one of his most enduring comedic plays, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Methinks I see things with parted eye, where everything seems double. So, as I mentioned, the first function of the play within the play is its function within the plot. Pyramus and Thisbe, performed by the rude mechanicals at the end of A Midsummer Night's Dream, is a Greek tragedy performed for a wedding celebration. But due to their ineptitude, which has been causing humour throughout the play since they first started their rehearsals, this play, inappropriate for its setting at a wedding celebration, becomes a pure comedy. It has no direct impact on the plot, but it provides humour for our characters, after they've had their happy ending. And for some critics, this has been enough. An amusing ending to a play crafted perfectly in the first 4 acts. But, as we already know, a play within a play can bring so much more than just slapstick humour. By placing this farce of folly right up against the folly we have just witnessed, we are led to compare and contrast the two, and to consider the themes we have already witnessed. Romantic love in all its grotesque, illogical forms. Indeed, as Pyramus and Thisbe is being performed as part of a wedding celebration, Shakespeare's audience would have had even more reason to compare the two, for A Midsummer Night's Dream was written for a wedding celebration. And the plot itself is an uncanny mirror, lovers caught up in misunderstanding and sorrow, enhanced by the night, but a tragic premise turned instead to comedy chaos. The 4 lovers and the fairy quarrels that we have witnessed in the rest of the play are ringed about by the chaos of the production. Where in rehearsal, Quince can't even assign the actors' parts without Bottom wanting to take every role in the play. What could have been tragic turns, as the thwarting parents are never even given a line of dialogue, and the barrier wall becomes much more a farce than a reason for action, causing us to contrast it with the rhythms and rhymes of Shakespeare. A Midsummer Night's Dream is Shakespeare's most imaginative play, and the one with the second most rhyming couplets. Only Love's Labour's Lost has more, and no one's read that one. Compare, if we offend, it is with our goodwill, that you should think we come not to offend, but with goodwill, to show our simple skill. That is the beginning of our end. With, if we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear. But this chaotic performance is outstripped by the chaos we have witnessed in the forest. Lovers swapping allegiance there and back again, and a fairy queen falling in love with a man called Bottom with the head of a donkey. We watch these characters laugh as the mechanicals cast a man to play a wall, in ignorance of the fact that we have been laughing at their machinations all along. And in Shakespeare's time, his company consisted of roughly 12 men and 4 boys, but there are nearly double that many characters. This would mean the roles had to be doubled, so the players and the fairies, with the exception of Bottom, may have been played by the same actors. Even more of a reason for us to directly contrast the two plays. But, as I've already said, there is a third reason for a play within a play, and that one is all the more interesting. All plays within a play cause the reader or watcher to consider the theatrical reality. What is true, what can be true, and the artifice and construction of theatre. It causes us to see our own position as theatre-goers, and see the irony and follies as the characters that we are watching become an audience themselves. A Midsummer Night's Dream is a play concerned, of course, with dreams, and all of our main characters fall asleep in some point of the action, meaning that what comes afterwards could not be real, could all be a dream. So, inserting a technique which causes the audience to consider the falsity of theatre into a production concerned with the idea of dreams and reality seems like a perfect fit. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare questions the powers of theatrical illusion and the limitations of art. Theseus and Hippolyta discuss the play that they have witnessed, Hippolyta complaining that it's the silliest that she's ever seen, and Theseus replying, "The best in this kind are shadows, and the worst no worse, if imagination amend them." Theseus keeps before us theatre as an idea, and he is the character who introduces the words image and imagination, and says he believes not in fables or fairies' toys, oblivious to the fact that he's been acting within a fable full of fairies. A knowing concept when we have been asked to both believe and not believe in fairies throughout the course of this play. If we don't believe in fairies, then the play holds no charm, but in the end, we have but slumbered here. His mentioning of the imagination and the role of it in the play that he has just witnessed causes us as the audience to notice the play that we have watched too, in which Theseus is a figment of the writer's imagination. The cause of humour in the production of Pyramus and Thisbe also comes from the mechanicals' misunderstanding of drama. They think that their audience will be unable to tell the difference between what is real and what is imaginary. When Bottom wishes to roar as a lion, Quince replies, "And you should do too terribly, that you would fright the Duchess and the ladies, and they would shriek." And Bottom suggests they should leave the killing out of it, because the ladies won't like it. Fail to understand that the audience knows that a drama is not reality, believing their audience so naive as to think that these clowns could create a convincing lion. They decide that they will explain that Pyramus is not Pyramus, but at the same time have to produce moonlight, and cast Tom Snout to play the character of the wall, which they seem to believe an audience couldn't possibly imagine. All this is even funnier for the audience, for we have been imagining all along that they are playing in moonlight. Even more so for an Elizabethan audience who would have watched this play in broad daylight. Quince says, "This green plot should be our stage, this hawthorn brake our tiring house," and leaves us audience to imagine a green plot and a hawthorn brake, where there is actually a stage and a tiring house. It reminds me of the cross-dressing used throughout Shakespeare's plays, where a boy plays viola playing a boy, for example. In this case, a stage is playing a grassy plot playing a stage. The real audience has been imagining fog and imagining that Oberon is invisible when we can clearly see him before our eyes. We have been imagining fairies that can sleep inside a flower, falling in love with a human man with a head of a donkey. When the Rouge Mechanicals put on their play, we are laughing at the audience who are laughing at follies, not knowing that we have witnessed their follies. But we are also laughing with the audience, because they understand the conventions of theatre the same way that we do. By drawing attention to the doubling of the performances, Shakespeare heightens the comedy of it all. I mentioned right at the beginning that Shakespeare used a play within a play in his comedies, but only one tragedy, and we'll get back to that later. Well, now is later, and I want to talk to you about the play within a play in Hamlet. We've seen how this works in comedy, how it can be a wink and a nudge to the audience, to let you know you're in the know and that you can laugh at yourself. It adds a layer of comedy that is always present when someone lacks self-awareness. But this isn't true of tragedy. We're not here to laugh at Hamlet, although there are some moments of brevity within the play. So why, in this most internal and philosophical of his plays, does Shakespeare employ this convention that he has only otherwise used in comedy? Other playwrights slip plays into tragedy, as we learnt during our context lesson, but for Shakespeare, this is the only time that he really attempted it. Why is that? One may smile and be the villain. Well, of course, the first function is the same. It's part of the plot. In Hamlet, even more so than in A Midsummer Night's Dream. The performance of the murder of Gonzago is the turning point of the play, the mousetrap in which Hamlet will catch the conscience of the king, by showing him the murder that he committed before the start of the play to see if he shows his guilt. In this way, unlike A Midsummer Night's Dream, the play within a play has direct consequence on the action of the drama. For Claudius flees, at once knowing he is caught and that it is Hamlet who has caught him. The enemies see each other across the room and the stage is set for the tragedy that is to follow. One of the most interesting things about Hamlet is that we never see the inciting incident on the stage. Or more accurately, the inciting incident is reported. It is the ghost telling Hamlet that he was murdered. And Hamlet spends a lot of the first part of the play trying to work out whether the ghost is telling him the truth, or is just trying to tempt him into revenge. That is why the play within a play becomes necessary, both as a confirmation of Claudius's guilt, but also for us as the audience, so that we can see the murder happen, albeit in a theatrical way and at one remove. The fact that Claudius's guilt is still kind of ambiguous after the play, and that we have seen the murder at that distance, combines to have us questioning reality. And what is Hamlet about, if not questioning reality? All of Hamlet's interactions with the players that he invites to perform show his obsession with performance. From the scene in Claudius's court at the beginning, in the audience chamber, Hamlet is shown to be preoccupied with the roles that people play, with the performance of mourning that he sees around him. When the players arrive, that theme is focus, and we see Hamlet's torment at the relationship he perceives between acting and authenticity. To hold as 'twere a mirror up to nature, to show her own virtue, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time is form and pressure. In a mirror, all is multiplied, and just like in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Hamlet contains repetitions and reflections. We have 4 grieving children: Hamlet, Ophelia, Laertes, Fortinbras. 2 suicidal mourners: Hamlet, Ophelia. 2 avengers: Hamlet, Laertes. And even 2 Hamlets. Our main Hamlet and the ghost of Hamlet, the dead king, itself a reflection of the king when he was living. And then we introduce the play within a play, a double of the main play, and also a double within itself, for it starts with a dumb show and then there is the play proper. We must, through similarities and comparisons, try to find the truth, just as Hamlet must too. Hamlet may have started the play by rejecting appearances and performance, but he is willingly theatrical and enjoys blurring the lines between performance and reality. The theatrical locus point of the play within a play forces us to see the theme of performance throughout the rest of the play. Indeed, even the opening is a performance of sorts, as Horatio and Marcellus et al. Wait for the ghost to appear. Once again, the characters on stage become an audience, and we watch them watching the ghost. And whether the ghost speaks true or is merely performing is, as I said, a vital part of the beginning scenes. There is, of course, also the dramatic irony that is at play throughout Hamlet. We, as the audience, know more than pretty much any character on the stage. Although, if the murder really took place, and if Hamlet is really sliding into madness, are two questions that still haunt us as well. There are many moments when characters hide and watch a performance. Whether it is Claudius and Polonius setting up Ophelia to act disinterested in Hamlet's love, or Polonius again meeting his tragic end by being a spectator to a conversation between Gertrude and Hamlet. Nowhere is this more evident than in watching the play within a play. We see the dumb show, which sets out the plot, so we have no need really to pay close attention to the actual play within a play. So we, like Hamlet, are watching Claudius watch the play, to see if he shows any sign of guilt. But we are also watching Hamlet watch Claudius watch the play, to see if Hamlet betrays himself to Claudius. This awareness of watching the characters play an audience causes us as the audience to become more aware of ourselves as spectators. It puts us at a remove from the action. And this very distance creates a sort of verisimilitude, because at that moment we are in full empathy with the characters on the stage. Everyone is the audience. As I mentioned earlier, at the time Shakespeare was writing, people were struggling with the question of whether drama was for good or for evil. And both sides of this moral argument play out within the course of the play. The play within a play stirs Claudius's conscience, but it also encourages Hamlet to take vengeance through murder. The theatre becomes a symbol for Hamlet, for Shakespeare, and for us, of making unseen realities seen, of exposing secret places. And the play itself is full of soliloquies and asides, wherein the actor talks directly to us almost. Hamlet becomes a sort of chorus, explaining to us all of the roles being played in the Danish court. This connection, this seeing through of disguises, causes us to become aware that what we are watching is a fiction. I, though poor ghost, while memory holds a seat in this distracted globe. Hamlet speaks of his globe and of the world, but also of the globe, the theatre in which the play is being performed. Distracted here means troubled, and all of us, Hamlet, the court of Elsinore, and those people in the audience, are distracted on the same point. We are united in our trouble. And so through distancing, Shakespeare once again pulls us close. I hope you found this video about Shakespeare interesting. I had a great time doing the research and writing for this one. Shakespeare is not something I've ever talked about on my channel before, so I had a great time doing this. If you'd like to watch more videos like this, more video essays that I have made, I will link my playlist in the cards above. I've made one about Pride and Prejudice called In Defence of Mrs. Bennet, and one about Wuthering Heights called Wuthering Heights is in fact a romance novel. So if you'd like to check those out, as I said, they will be in the cards above and in the description below. Please let me know in the comments if you had any thoughts about this, and also if you have any ideas for other video essays that you would like me to produce. I have had a really great time doing this, but I'd like to make sure that the essays I'm producing are ones that you are interested in. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you did like it, so I know to keep creating these, and to subscribe. I put out new videos 3 times a week, so I will be back again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!